The second international break of the season is almost at a conclusion. There's been some fantastic performances from Arsenal's players as they head back to domestic action, looking to take Arsenal to some big trophies, we hope, at the end of the season. We're going to discuss that and more with a special guest in today's Arsenal News Show special. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is indeed our Arsenal News Show special. I'm very happy to be joined today by Andrew from Arseblog. How you doing, mate? You good, you well?
I'm fine, Tom. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. Good, thank you. How have you spent your enthralling international break?
I have been doing a lot of kind of admin stuff, work stuff that I hate doing, but needs to get done, as you know yourself, paperwork and things like that. So I've been doing a bit of that, bit of PlayStation, rage quitting on FIFA 26 or EA.
I feel you. I feel you completely. Yes. This is the first year I've played it in 3 years. I thought, I'll download it this year. It turns out I'm terrible at it, but I often rage quit.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I try not to, but you go up a couple of levels or up a couple of divisions, and then you realize you're playing against kids who are brilliant, who are
not only brilliant, but they have all the time in the world to play that game.
Correct. Yeah. And they're doing rainbow flicks over my head and scoring goals from 50 yards and stuff. So I sort of alternate between the FIFA or EA 26, I think it's called now, and the new Ghost of Yotai game, which is excellent. So that's a bit more calming because I can channel my rage at the football into slicing people up with my weapons. So it all works out.
I'm an Xbox player, so I'm on the other side. And to be honest, that's not a proud thing to say these days because Xbox is in a bit of a rut at the moment. But my equally, in terms of slicing things up, I'm playing a game called Dying Light, which is like zombie apocalypse / parkour type game. So it's that's my groove at the moment. But a few of the Arsenal boys have been slicing the back of the net up a little bit during the course of this international break. We're recording this, of course, we're live Tuesday afternoon. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all of you joining us live in the chat box, and those, of course, catching up as well. But a couple of bits of news to discuss. Max Dowman has just become the youngest ever under 19s England goal scorer. He scored in a 7-0 win today for England's under 19s in that victory. With Noni Madueke out at the moment, Ødegaard, of course, out as well. We'll probably talk about those in a little bit more detail. Do you see him getting a few more opportunities in this next run of fixtures up to the November international break?
I think so. I mean, if he was in the squad at Anfield, wasn't he? He was in the squad at Anfield. If he's in the squad
for the last few minutes of that game.
That's right. If he can be in the squad for that kind of game, I don't see why there wouldn't be time for him over the next sort of 4 or 5 weeks between this interlull and the next one. There's an EFL Cup game, which I guess he would look for some serious involvement in. Also, away game at Slavia Prague as well. So, maybe there are fixtures in which he could definitely feature. It depends who's fit. Madueke's out. There are other alternatives, I suppose. You could look at Ethan Nwaneri for the right-hand side, Gabriel Martinelli for the right-hand side, but with Ødegaard out as well, maybe Nwaneri will be a more central figure. So, why not? Why not? Who did England beat 7-0 or the under-19?
Wales, yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's not good. Ethan played for England under 21s and they beat Andorra 1-0.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, what's going on here? We have the Faroe Islands beating the Czech Republic and Cape Verde qualifying for the World Cup. Some of these
beat Sweden away from home yesterday.
Some of these smaller nations are, typically there was a time where they would get absolutely turned over in every game, and that's not the case. So, wow, Wales getting spanked 7-0 by England. They're not going to enjoy that one, but great for Max. He's still only 15. I don't know if we forget that, but I think we've kind of gotten used to him being around and we forget how actually mental it is that a 15-year-old is in the conversation. The conversation we should probably be having about a 15-year-old is, I hear this guy could be a prospect in a couple of years, not like, do you think he might play against Atletico Madrid? That's kind of where we are with this, which is nuts, but it's a testament to his quality and maturity that he's in the conversation the way he is.
Absolutely, and with Madueke out, I think it's obviously relevant that he's in the squad, and with Odegaard out, that kind of moves Waneri potentially, as you mentioned, they're playing for the under-21s at the moment, but maybe moves him more so into the thinking of Arteta in more of a central area if he wasn't already, of course.
Yeah.
But you've got those avenues now for those players. And there's been a lot of kind of talk about kind of Dalman, Waneri and Miles, the younger players. Are they getting enough minutes? In some ways, do you think we were almost spoiled last season and to a degree at the start of this and in pre-season with the exposure we've seen to those players? I remember I put it to Arteta and I said, is this just what we should actually expect players to kind of be exposed to at this age in their career? And he said, he doesn't work off that. He works off of what he thinks they'll bring them. But I do think there is an element from a fan perspective to not get too caught up in just how many minutes these very young players are getting.
Yeah, I think so. We project our worst fears onto, them when they don't get minutes, because they were heavily involved last season. Obviously, Miles maybe a bit more than Ethan. Ethan was in the team and then sort of, fell away a little bit when Bukayo was back and didn't play a huge amount. But Miles was basically first choice left back. But maybe the reason he was first choice left back was because Calafiori was injured. And also Mikel Arteta didn't want to give minutes to Kieran Tierney or Alexander Zinchenko because he maybe looked at the longer term picture. What is the benefit, or what would have been the benefit of Arsenal giving minutes to Tierney or Zinchenko at left back last season? Not much, because they were both, going to be on their way this summer. Whereas, I'm not saying he just gave Miles Lewis-Skelly minutes to develop him, because he played him in very big games and important games, and Miles played brilliantly in those games. But there is a benefit, isn't there, to sort of giving somebody a grounding and giving them those minutes. And listen, they have a fight on their hands because Arsenal have a great squad, have a really, really big squad. It's what we've all wanted. We've all wanted the depth. We didn't want to go into another season with a player the far side of 30, a lone player, like Raheem Sterling, who's fallen away and wasn't really up to the level. A load of young players who weren't really ready for that level either. So we all want this thing, and one of the consequences of that is that some players are going to miss out. So I don't worry too much at this point, to be honest. We've got a long season ahead, and things can change very quickly. I just think it's maybe not the worst thing in the world for them to realize that if you want to be part of a team that is going to challenge for the title, hopefully, that you've really, really got to work hard to get in there ahead of players of the quality we have, whether it's Odegaard or Eze for Waneri, or whether it's Calafiori and perhaps even Piero Hincapié when we return after the interlude for Miles Lewis-Skelly. It's a good challenge. Maybe it's a bit of sink or swim, see how they react, see what the character is like, see what the personality is like. The quality we know is there. Maybe this is a little bit of a test of character from Arteta.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I remember the first game of the season where he took Max up with the squad to Old Trafford, and I think after the pre-season, we just had everyone was kind of thinking, well, he's got to be in the squad for this game because we just seem a better team if he's in that group and offering us something. But he wasn't in the squad, and I remember the press conference after that game where he basically said, he took him up there and didn't put him on the squad to kind of see how he would react in some ways. So I guess not being selected. And it was a really interesting bit of insight into kind of how they get into the mindset of younger players, how they respond, their temperament and their maturity as well, which clearly has been very impressed by, as well as his ability. But yeah, Arsenal went into this international break. We'll come out of it, of course, with no games having been played at the top of the table. It feels like after that Anfield game that we alluded to earlier, that the world was kind of falling apart, and our house the roof had blown off, and all of our hopes and dreams of a title had almost, for many, had taken such a huge hit because we'd failed to beat our main title rivals in their backyard. The selection and the substitutions were under question. That happened again in the Manchester City game. But fast forward now, and Arsenal sit where they sit. have got a favourable run of games coming up, whereas our title rivals, Liverpool, of course, and City as well, have got some challenging games coming up. They play each other, I think, in this next round of fixtures as well. So how are you feeling about where Arsenal sit, where they are, and the kind of drastic turn, how the tables have turned, or the turntables, if you want to go for the Office reference. But yes, what do you make of it?
I mean, obviously very happy with where we are, because top of the table is where you want to be. So there's no complaints in that regard. You know, I'm sort of long enough in the tooth, Tom, to not get pulled from pillar to post in the same way you see some of the reaction online happening. I'm certainly not on Twitter, where I think a lot of that stuff gets very, very extreme. So, you know, I saw it. I saw some of the reaction. Obviously, you know, the Man City game, I've said this, I don't know if I said it on my own podcast or somewhere else, but after that game, I don't think we've ever had a level of discourse quite like it. In all the years we've been doing Arseblog, the amount of comments, people had so much to say.
Yeah.
And I understand it. I mean, I get it. I do understand. It's a big game. We looked like we were going to lose, then we got it back. And that sort of preys on people's fears a bit as well. People had a lot to say. And then, as you say, a week later, we have a win over Newcastle, a win over Olympiacos, was it?
Olympiacos, yeah.
And then a win over West Ham. So we win 3 in a row. We're top of the table. We go into the international break. I think it's a lesson, if people want to take the lesson, that things can change very, very quickly in football. I fear a little bit that there is, with this Arsenal team this season, a sort of worst case scenario being projected onto us every time something goes wrong. So I think that is something we're going to have to contend with over the course of this season. That the stakes are so high and the expectations are high, and we all want Arsenal to go the distance this time around. But I think you have to remember, in football seasons, things ebb and things flow. Not everything is perfect. You have to fight hard to win games in the Premier League. You have to fight hard to draw a game sometimes in the Premier League. That's normal. This is not a new thing. It's not an indictment on this team per se. That, you know, if you go back to seasons where we won the league, and even the season when we won the league unbeaten, there were games where Arsenal had to scrap and really fight to get a draw. There were 12 draws that season. Imagine if we had 12 draws in this season, people would be going out of their minds, you know, because maybe it might be too many draws. I don't know. But, you know, the best Arsenal team that I have ever seen had days where it didn't work, had days where things didn't quite go the way you would expect them to go, had games where they had to dig deep into the reserves to find a goal to save a point. You know, that was all part and parcel of winning the title back then. So I think we have to try and remember that it is to use an old cliche, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And the first 4 or 5 games were a sprint, and a difficult sprint, because we had, you know, challenging fixtures, quite a few of them away from home. And, you know, we came through okay. And then a couple of games later, we're top of the table. And that should tell you something about how it is to try and cope with what football is going to throw at you this season, because it is going to make us go mad. There are going to be days, games that don't go our way, or performances where, with all the best intentions, you know, it just doesn't happen. That is the nature of football and the nature of sport. And I don't think, you know, after one of those games, you know, have we had a really, really bad performance this season? I don't think we have.
No.
Like Liverpool, we got done by that goal, but that was
a better team in the first half.
Well, yeah, and Liverpool didn't do a lot in that game. Did we do a lot? No, but I think we had 2 teams that really respected each other, cancel each other out. We made Manchester City play like, you know, Sean Dyche's Burnley at one point, you know, take off all their strikers, put on all their defenders, and park the bus. That's what we did to Man City. And thankfully we got a goal. You know, I think there are obviously things that we can do better. There are things that we can improve, and there's no question about that. But I don't think we've played really, really badly this season so far. And that, you know, when you're top of the table going into an international break, is something that maybe you look at as a positive. For me, anyway.
Yeah, no, I think the worst performance is probably the opening day at Man United for me. I feel as though that's probably
Yeah.
our worst game because we were just so loose in possession. I think there were 12 turnovers that we didn't take advantage of. We gave the ball up quite easy. We allowed United to have a fair few more chances than we should have done. And if that's your worst performance is the opening day and you've built from there, that's a pretty good sign, that you're continually growing and improving and certain aspects of the team are playing better. And I hear you, especially about kind of the whole, like, we should be blitzing teams at times. And, you play against Olympiacos, West Ham, you've beaten Leeds 5-0, 3 past Forest in these fixtures. And you go to some of these other games like West Ham and you have to wait until like the really late on, same with Olympiacos, to get the second goal. And I absolutely hear that people feel as though that there should be more convincing displays, or we should be more dominant, or we should be putting teams to the sword sooner in matches. But at the end of the day, Arsenal have conceded just 1 goal from open play all season, and find themselves very comfortable in pretty much every single game they play.
Well, yeah, and as well, like in 3 of the games that we played, we lost our captain and chief playmaker in the first half an hour of those games, 3 games in a row. We've had to do without Bukayo Saka for 3-4 weeks. We didn't have William Saliba for a while. We haven't had Kai Havertz. I'm sure that Ben White was injured in the first game of the season.
Madueke now as well.
Madueke's out now as well, and we're coping and we're doing well. So I think what I think is the most important thing, and I'm sure this is not something I have to tell your viewers, is that when we look at a game, when we look at a season, when we try and analyze what's going on, you have to look at context, and the unfortunate part is sometimes you do that and people say, well, you're making excuses.
Yeah.
And it's not about excuses. It is about trying to understand what has happened, why it's happened, and why, or how can we improve? How can we do better? If you remove context from everything, you can make it either brilliant or terrible. And there's nothing in between. And that's just not how life works. It's not how football works. It's not how life works. So I think we have to apply context as much as possible. If we're sitting here and we've lost 7 games and we're bottom of the table and we're saying, well, we haven't had Odegaard or Saka or Saliba, that's making excuses because you shouldn't lose 7 games.
Yeah.
But when you're top of the table, and you haven't quite played as well as people want, maybe apply the context and see if you can understand why that happens. And then think about, how can we improve? How can we do better? How can we get more out of certain players? How can we get better output? How can we make games more convincing? I think that's a good foundation for what you want from this team for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I look at Arsenal very much as a coiled spring right now, and I feel as though that if you're sitting where we sit right now after the start of the season in terms of the difficulty of fixtures that we've had, and we're leading the race, if you'd have offered me at the beginning of the season to be top by a point after the first 7 games, I would have snapped your arm off for that, because the first 7 games that we have been offered, well, the first 6 more than 7, because West Ham was the 7th, but still. And I say that we lost to West Ham last season at home, so I should include West Ham in that as well. And you think about Newcastle, we lost that game in the previous season, and the next 2 games we've got in the league away to Fulham and at home to Palace. We drew both of those games last season, so there's more opportunities to get a net gain on points as well coming up. So if we get to that, if we get through the next 2 and we've won them both, we'll be 10 points better off across the last 4 fixtures than we were in the previous season. And if Arsenal go through the next 31 games being boring but winning, I couldn't care less. I could not care less. I like to be entertained. Sure, I want to see entertaining football, and I think that we do play some really good football. And I think that actually it's more to do with our opponents than it is to do with us as to why we get frustrated as fans. Because if you look at the way that teams obviously try and stifle Arsenal and limit Arsenal as much as possible, that isn't conducive to a team that plays brilliant football. And if you look at Liverpool and how they've played football over the last however many seasons, not just with Slot, but with Jurgen Klopp as well, you'd argue they're a more entertaining side, but they concede far many more goals than Arsenal do, because it's a more chaotic state of play. And I felt last season pretty much every roll of the dice went in Liverpool's direction, be it in terms of fortune in games, be it in terms of their best players staying fit, their rivals, of course, not having that benefit as well. And so if you are a team that rolls the dice in pretty much every single game you play, then you are going to be in a situation of vulnerability. And I think that we've seen that with Liverpool this season. I just feel that, I feel like Arteta goes, if he is to roll the dice, when he plays an opponent, when he's rolling a dice, he comes with like 3 or 4 extra dice compared to the opponent because he just wants to have the best chance of winning every game as feasibly possible. So he comes with more dominance. He comes with more control. The amount of times we've sat and heard him say, we deserve to win this game. How we've won this game, I don't know. And these kind of lines, because there have been so many examples of that. And while I get that that's frustrating and sometimes we want to see a bit more accountability, often the reality is that has been the case for Arsenal, that they have deserved more than they have got. And if this season it finally falls in our direction, we will get the benefits from that. I mean, how do you see kind of Arsenal's, based upon what you've seen of us and what you've seen of City and Liverpool in particular? Because I feel as though they're the 3 that are the most likely and with a chance this season. Do you put Arsenal as, and just to give you some data, I don't know if you've looked at kind of the bookies and what they're saying at the moment, but they have Arsenal as evens right now compared to, say, Liverpool, who are 3-1 across most of them. And in the Champions League, Opta have got Arsenal at 18% favourites to win the Champions League. The next highest is Liverpool with 14% and then PSG with 13%. It is kind of mad now where Arsenal are being assessed and judged in terms of the data.
I think so. They're setting the bar very, very high for Arsenal. And then whenever Arsenal fall below that bar, they stick the knives in a big way, I mean, am I allowed to say that's bollocks?
Yeah, sure.
Because,
absolutely.
Listen, Manchester City have won the title four times in a row until last season. Liverpool have got experience of winning the title recently, right? There is a real... once you get over the line, I think it becomes easier to get over that line again. Arsenal may have a great squad. We may be in great shape. We may have really good players, but what we don't have is that experience of becoming champions and getting over the line. I mean, to call any team evens favorites for the Premier League after 7 games when they're a point clear at the top of the table is nonsense as far as I'm concerned. I think Manchester City will be there or thereabouts. I think Liverpool will be there or thereabouts. I think Arsenal will be there or thereabouts. It is a question of like who can produce the most consistently, and maybe, as you alluded to, who just has a little bit of luck on their side. And I'm not saying what Liverpool did last season was lucky, because they played a certain way. They had the best player in the world last season, I think, in Mo Salah, just delivering week after week after week. That's not luck when you do it with consistency. But what we haven't had as a football club in the last couple of seasons is that stroke of luck, that just little bit of good fortune, the thing that goes our way. We've been a little bit Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And I think for Arsenal to go the distance this season, we're going to need to be really, really good. We're going to need to be really consistent. We're going to have to win big games, potentially against those title rivals. And we're probably just going to need something to go our way, whether that's our players to stay fit, which doesn't seem to be happening right now. So I don't know, or, for Haaland to get an injury. That would be a huge problem for Manchester City.
Yeah.
Massive problem when you look at how many goals he scored this season and what percentage of the goals that he has scored. If Van Dijk or, I don't know, Salah or, well, Alisson's got an injury and they've got a very good goalkeeper, but, that kind of a thing, just a little thing that tips the balance in our favor. I feel like we haven't had that. And it's out of our control. So Mikel Arteta will say, the only thing we can do is control what we can control. And that's winning football matches, playing well, playing smartly, winning football matches, scoring goals, achieving results. That's the only thing that we can do. But I can't help but shake the idea that if we do win the league, there might be just something externally that goes our way or might be perceived to go our way. And I kind of hope that happens. I hope the two things are true, right? That we're really good, but also something happens. I'm not talking about anybody having a career ender or something, but, just somebody missing for a couple of months at a key point in the season. Look what happened to us last January. Saka gets injured. Jesus comes back and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, he remembers how to score goals. What a good player he is. He gets injured. Then Kai Havertz gets injured. Then Gabriel Martinelli gets it. It's like,
Gabriel Magalhaes gets injured as well for the whole of the end of the season.
Come on,
yeah,
give us a break, please, universe, if they're out there listening, I'm sure the universe is sitting watching this stream right now, Tom. Just give us something. You know, I feel like we need that. I feel like we've earned it. We deserve it. You know, we've been through a lot, you know, in terms of things just not quite happening for us. And maybe we're overdue just that little slice of good fortune somewhere along the way.
Arsenal went to PSG in the Champions League semi-final with Mikel Merino as their main centre forward last season. And on the bench, when, for the record, PSG didn't have a single injured player in their entire squads. And we went there with Tommy Setford, Nathan Butler-Adeji, Jack Henry Francis, and Ethan Waneri, with respect to those guys on the bench. And that's 4 youth players. Waneri, of course, is part of the senior group, but still at that time, I think 17, 18 years of age. You know, you've got players on there like Tierney, who was going to leave. You know, Ben White had barely been fit all season. And Zinchenko and Jorginho, who are all going to go in the summer. And that's what Arsenal had after putting 5 past Real Madrid.
Yeah, like, where are your game changers? You know what I mean? That was the thing. It's like you know, I know Arteta took a lot of stick for this, you know, when he said that he thought we were the better team than PSG, whatever it was he said, right? But when you looked at it statistically, Arsenal, even with those limitations, created quite a lot against PSG in both the games. Donnarumma made some unbelievable saves. Yeah. You know, it's easy to forget that now. You look at those chances and you think one of those goes in, and you know, particularly the first 15 minutes of the home game, I think, where
and the away game as well.
And the away, yeah, you know, so I think it was a Rice header, and oh God, I can't remember. I've tried to sort of blank it out of my mind a little bit.
Great.
But you know, I'm not a sort of an XG evangelist in any way, right? But I think
you're not Elliot, is what you're saying.
Well, clearly. But when you looked at the XG across the 2 ties, you know, there was something there from an Arsenal perspective in terms of what we produced. We didn't and couldn't get the finish, and couldn't apply those finishes, but we didn't have anyone else on the bench. We'd nobody to come off the bench and be a game changer or to have that sort of ruthlessness. And you're looking, hopefully this season, when we get to that stage of the competition where, you know, we could be in a, fingers crossed, Champions League semi-final, and we need a goal, and we can take or put on Gabriel Martinelli, Victor Gyökeres, and Eberechi Eze, let's say, from the bench to try and get us a goal. Or Nani Madueke, or Kai Havertz. So, you know, this is the difference. This is the difference. So, yeah, we need to keep our guys fit, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, which is a challenge, because obviously we've lost at least 1 player in 6 of the 7 Premier League games so far this season, which is mad. 3 of those have been Odegaard in 3 separate games, to be fair. But Saka was lost in the Leeds game as well in the second game. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think Arteta's on record, you know, his quote around at this point of the season, being the PSG games, you need your best players to be fit, and we just didn't have that. And those that were there, like Saka had just returned, was not the Saka that we needed him to be in those moments. And we just need to hope that come April, May, that we're hopefully still in those competitions, that we do have those best players available. And if we are going to suffer through injuries, that they happen in this first part of the season, and that Madueke comes back stronger, and Havertz comes back stronger, and Odegaard comes back stronger, and we stop losing players. Because it just does feel so monotonous and relentless that we keep losing such players to injuries. And I get kind of bored as well with then having to kind of discuss the broader, not naivety, the conspiracies of kind of injuries as well. And I have to always remind the listeners that Arsenal invest millions in the best doctors, the best sports scientists, the best strength and conditioning coaches. They're making the best decisions based on expertise that is so unrivaled, you know, that we can't comprehend. That unfortunately bad luck has come into all 3 of Odegaard's injuries have been unfortunate impact problems as an example. So we just need the luck to turn our way, and we've had a hell of a lot of bad luck, and law of averages would say that it's going to drop our way very soon. Magnum says, and thank you for super chat. Good evening, Andrew. Love your show and yours as well, Tom. Well, thank you for remembering to tag that on the end. And Paul says here, David Hill Wood said, if you ask fans what they want open attacking football. The truth, however, is that they want their team to win each game. If it leads to trophies, they don't care how you do it, which kind of touches upon what we were talking about earlier. And Ken says, Tom, when will we see you with a majestic tash as well? Soon, November, you know. The missus won't let me, is all I'll say to that, is that she has absolutely no. I guess you're quite lucky in the sense that kind of like this part has stayed brown, whereas this is kind of grayed, so it stands out more.
It does a bit. It does a bit. Yeah, it'll all catch up soon, I think. But you know, for now, I can get away with it.
Indeed. We'll take a couple of we've got about 10 minutes left, so we'll take some questions from the chat. Raf says, what do you make of Saka being vice captain? He spoke up against the ref versus Newcastle and often takes responsibility. Are we seeing the evolution of him, and does Arteta view captains differently?
I mean, he's made more appearances for Arsenal than any other player in the squad at this moment in time. He's 24 years of age now, which is still quite young, but I think when you're a player like Saka, when you're a figure like Saka as well, you know, somebody who's come through the academy and sort of embodies everything that we want our academy to be, the sort of the next step is if he is that kind of personality, to give him that bit of extra responsibility in terms of being part of the leadership group, you know, because we know Arteta is you know, Martin Odegaard is the captain, but he's not the only leader. And Mikel Arteta is big on leadership, and you don't have to be wearing the armband to show leadership. Declan Rice does it, you know, Gabriel does it, William Saliba does it, David Raya does it. You know, they all do it in their different ways. I just think there's something a bit, is iconic the right word to use about Bukayo Saka, that he's such he feels like the most representative of this version of Arsenal, right? Yeah. Where he has sort of he emerged like a phoenix from the flames of, you know, the end of the Wenger era, the start of the Unai Emery era. And has become so important to this team and so beloved by Arsenal fans, not just because he's an academy player. You know, you can look at Eddie, for example, or Emile Smith-Rowe, you know, players who came through the academy but didn't quite have the same quality as Bukayo Saka. And I think when you think about what this Arsenal is, Bukayo Saka is at the very center of it. So I think it's a smart move from Arteta if he is going to be vice captain for certain games, because I'm not saying this is his Arsenal, but he is very much aligned with what this Arsenal is. And I think if that, you know, elicits a bit more from him because he has that bit of extra responsibility, I think it's a good thing. Because what more can you teach Bukayo Saka as a footballer now? How do you develop him? How does he mature more? How does he become more impactful? Well, he'll do it with his feet. He'll do it on the pitch. But if there's a slightly different role for him off the pitch as well, you know, he speaks and represents this club brilliantly every time you see him talk, you know, whether it's after a game or whether it's something to do with the endeavors that he, you know, is always pretty much involved in. He represents this club really well, and I think having the armband from time to time is no bad thing.
I'll always remember that tweet he put out on December 16th, 2020. I know that because I've just found it. It's not off the top of my head.
What time was it, Tom? December 16th, 2020.
10 past 8 in the evening is what it was. And it just followed Arsenal's 1-1 draw with Southampton, and he tweeted a picture of himself sitting, you know, arms around his knees, head bowed. You deserve more, Arsenal fans. And that tweet, I think, as you mentioned, kind of the phoenix rising from the fire, that tweet, I think, is kind of Saka heritage, if you like, because it really was. He embodies the club. He embodies the academy, embodies style of play, embodies flair and thrill and great goals and great assists and great creativity. 100 goal contributions in the league in 200 Premier League games. Sure. You know, I think he's the 8th player to reach that tally. He's got the ear of Thierry Henry and Ian Wright. You know, he's beloved by everyone, and his personality is great. And he's come through some real adversity you know, as a man as well, you
For
know,
sure.
on the European international stage, as well as everybody is well documents, and now has gone through big injuries, which hadn't necessarily happened before like it did last season. He had little niggles here and
Yeah.
there, but to come through the big hamstring injury they had, and then this season, I mean, I'll never forget the look on his face when he was walking off the field at the start of this season with that minor hamstring problem, because that looked like a man who thought he'd done it again to me, and
Yeah,
thankfully it was
maybe.
only a minor problem. But yeah, he's a hell of an icon for this club. One Didier says, question: do you know if Arsene Wenger will come back for a match this season? Maybe a good locker room team talk that is different at halftime. I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? The vibe with Arsene Wenger in 2025 in the modern, because it does seem that he wanted a complete kind of rip the cord detachment and go off and do his thing. And I know he's had the FIFA stuff going on, but does it still surprise you in any way, kind of how detached he still remains from the modern Arsenal, if you like?
Not really. I mean, I think, you know, when you look back on it, when you look at everything that happened, and there was that documentary as well, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And the book wasn't very good.
No.
Unfortunately, it was a real
Documentary was
shame.
better.
Documentary was better, but you know what you got was a man who was very, very hurt by the fact that it ended, and maybe also how it ended. And I think maybe the issue isn't, I don't think Arsene Wenger has any issue with Mikel Arteta or Per
No.
Mertesacker or anybody like that. I think it goes a little bit higher, you know, it's executive level. I'm glad that we had that, you know, those times where he came to, was he at a West Ham game? I can't remember what game he was at. Anyway, he's been at a couple of games anyway. He was in the
We
stands.
lost. So yeah, I think he was
Was it
there
that
when we
West
lost
Ham game where we like had
2-0.
40 shots and couldn't score anyway?
Yeah, I think it was.
You know, I'm glad that bridge was mended to a certain extent, but obviously he's doing different things now, and he's doing different things for an organization that many of us would look at and think, oh, I wish you weren't doing that with them and with Gianni Infantino and you know what FIFA is and what FIFA does to the game, you know, under the auspices of promoting football and all that kind of stuff. I think what we can all see is that FIFA is an organization that is corrupted to a large extent and is driven by motives that are not really in line with what's good for the game.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm choosing my words very carefully.
No,
Obviously,
I'm trying to help.
you know, so if he comes back, great. You know, it will be great to see him back. But if he doesn't, that's also okay. I think he's probably at peace with that. And I think, you know, Arsenal fans, when he came, welcomed him back. But he's doing his own thing now. And, you know, maybe just doesn't have time.
Yeah, no, maybe he doesn't. No, he's quite old, you know, with respect to the man. You know, he's not a spry man anymore. Although, you know, to be fair to him, he stayed fit for an incredibly long period of time, and I'm sure still does.
He's
as
fitter
well.
than you or I, Tom, at this
100%.
point. I would say. So.
100%. 100%. That image of him on the beach will be forever. Yeah, I've almost got like a Han Solo kind of statuesque kind of image of that.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean.
Symbol says the parallels between this squad and our 98 double winning squad is worthy of excitement. Rather than the French connection, we now have a Spanish version, and both squads have a strong English influence. The Spanish influence is an interesting one, I find, because I think we've gone through phases. We had like a German period, I think Podolski and Mertesacker, etc., being linked to others as well at the time. And now we have this Spanish contingent and a Spanish-speaking contingent, which is significant as well. Mosquera did an interview over the international break where he spoke about how there were so many Spanish speakers that he found the integration very easy. So do you feel that is simply because we have a Spanish manager? Is it really that simple?
Well, maybe he keeps buying all the players from his hometown. You know, he's having a San Sebastian reunion in North London. Yeah, I think there's probably some predisposition towards your compatriots, isn't there? In the same way that Arsene Wenger, I mean, he knew the French market very well, but at the same time, even when, let's say, that little bit of an advantage he had about knowing the French market, he would still kind of default to that at times. You know, you look at some of the signings that we made, like, would Arsene Wenger have signed Yaya Sanogo if he wasn't French? I don't
Probably
know.
not.
You know, would he have signed whatever the Division 3 equivalent of Yaya Sanogo was? Probably not, you know. But because he's French, there is that sort of, you know, he's one of us. Maybe, you know, I can polish him up like some of my former gems. I think as well, it is just, you know, another thing to talk about is that, you know, the Spanish players that we have are very good. You know, Martin Zubamendi's been brilliant. I think Mikel Merino's done a great job. David Raya has been excellent since he came into the club. Christian Mosquera, obviously a new signing. So I think, yeah, it is part of having a Spanish manager, that there's going to be a part of him that wants a level of that around. But I can't remember who left the question or the comment there. You know, there's a good mix, there's a good blend as well, isn't there? You know, we do have that English influence, you know, we do have that it's a different kind of core symbol eyes. So yeah, so it's a different kind of English contingent than in '98, obviously, because it was that back four, wasn't there? And Ian Wright was there as well. But those guys have been there and done that, and sort of, you know, won the league in the past. And I think they were the sort of foundation, the cornerstone of Wenger's team going on to do it. But yeah, I hope this team can be as successful as that one. You know, if we can talk about the 2026 double winning team at some point in the future, I think we'll all be pretty happy.
I'll be very happy indeed. Last question, completely tangent, but kind of bringing things full circle to how we open the show. What is your favorite video game of all time?
Oh, God almighty. My favorite video game of all time.
If you could only play one more for the rest of your life, what would it be? Because it wouldn't be EAFC 26.
It definitely wouldn't be. You know, there's brilliant games that, you know, have incredible stories. So something like the Last of Us games are brilliant. The Last of Us 2. But they're, you know, when you play through a game like that, you need to give it a while before you can replay it again. So you want something, I think, that you can just play over and over and over in a way, but it's also different. So I'm gonna say, and look, it's not my favorite of all time, because I'd have to think about all the games that I've played in my life. But I think if you were to put me on a desert island right now and say you can only have one video game with you, it would be Rocket League.
Really? Oh, that's really interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because it's such a fun game.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd need to have a Wi-Fi connection on the.
Otherwise, it'd just be you.
It could be me on my own. It could be crap. But like, I'm assuming that like I can get
for sure,
some Wi-Fi connection on the desert island, and I can just play, you know, 2v2s, which is my favorite on Rocket League, 2v2 online, and work my way up the leagues, and then lose a load of games and go back down the leagues. It's a great game. And it just stands up for that.
Does James play Rocket League? I feel like we need an Arsecast extra Rocket League special.
I don't know if he does. We did FIFA back in the day. We've done a few FIFA videos back in the day, and they're always a bit of fun, you know, because you can just sort of mess around a bit. But yeah, I think that would be my desert island video game.
I love that. That was so out of left field, and I really wasn't expecting that.
There you go. What about you?
Oh, I mean, I grew up on Halo, as I said, and I'm an Xbox boy, so I grew up on Halo, and it's again like Xbox, it's gone downhill in more recent times. Halo 2, easily I could replay that campaign over and over again. But if I had to stick with one game, and the replayability of it is an offline game, and it would be Fallout 4.
Oh yes, I love Fallout 4. Actually, that's a brilliant one.
So I'd have to go Fallout 4 because there's so many pathways and builds you can do. I love restricting myself as well. Like, you can only use this for this playthrough. Like, you can only use melee weapons for this playthrough.
Oh wow! No, I've never quite done that. But I think the last time I did a playthrough, maybe last year or the year before, and I got really into building my base. I had these like extraordinarily big structures. I figured out how to make the stairs work, which was always an impediment to building. And I think one of them got so big that I wasn't able to build anymore. I wasn't able to add any more stuff to it. And it's so utterly pointless You know, the game is the game. You go around, you shoot things, you follow the story and whatever. But then you sit there and you spend 4 hours building a 9-story shack for no good reason, only that you can. And isn't that the joy of video games?
There's a YouTuber called Kort, K-O-R-T.
Okay.
And he does these videos where he has like a mod on Fallout where it takes off the restriction of how much building you can do.
Okay.
And he rebuilds, like, he's now added like a story to it. There's like a story to it, but he rebuilds all of these different places in Fallout using the the building stuff. So, and honestly, it's incredible what he builds. So I'd recommend checking out KORT Core. They're only kind of short 10-15-minute videos, but they're really good. And it's very impressive.
Shout out, by the way, to Smithicus. I can see in the comments here, it says Red Dead Redemption 2. That's an absolute classic. And that stands up to quite a bit of replaying as well. So
100%. 100% GTA.
We could be here all day, Tom.
we could do a whole separate podcast just on gaming. And oh goodness me, where would we go? But thank you, Andrew, for your time and your insight as always. There was a really nice comment as well I wanted to round off with, just from one dude who says, Andrew is so cerebral when he talks about football through analogies. He gets the best out of everyone he has dialogue with. So I thought that was a nice way to...
Thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate that. And, as ever, appreciate everybody watching and the kind comments. So pleasure to be on as always, Tom.
Yeah, and clearly you're helping because Cosmos has just found this channel exists. Thanks for sharing on Blue Sky, Andrew. So there you go.
There you go.
Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
Post, Tom, yeah,
100%. You can find all of Andrew's stuff, of course, on the Arsecast or at Arseblog. Of course, make sure you're a Patreon subscriber to get all the extra content that comes with that as well. And I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early, as always, at 8 a.m. to discuss all of the happenings, which there is so much of because it is the international break. So I look forward to trawling through that. But we'll talk more about Max Dowman scoring and Gabriel Martinelli scoring and some other performances too. So stay tuned for that. But other than that, it's been a pleasure. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.